Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? There we go. Want to make sure. All right. So the first like 10 seconds was like complete silence while we're like talking heads. Let me close the door real quick.
Okay. Do not disturb.
Yeah, right.
Recording
I need
in
an
progress.
on air, one of those on air signs.
Right.
So, don't need this jacket. Not that cold in here.
It's chilly outside.
It is chilly outside. It's been chilly for a minute too.
I know. It's been like a continuous flow
of chill.
Yes.
Which is weird. Like I'm not used to Florida being so.
Usually we'll have like 2 or 3 days of it. And then we'll get back to like the 70s or 80s.
It's very unusual.
Yeah.
I feel like something is just different. And I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like just something feels different. And I don't know if it's like I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's in the air. And then on top of that, like it's cold.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like you have this sort of air of like, oh, it's in the, you kind of like you walk around.
I feel like too, it's not been as sunny lately. It's been very gray and very.
It feels like we're in north somewhere, like up in
like
Connecticut.
In Washington, or the Seattle area.
Take your weather back, please.
I know. Yes, I've been noticing that too. I'm like, oh, the sun is peeking out. It's
I know.
Nice. Yeah.
Like we went. We got sick last week, and we had a planned trip to go to do bike packing, which is kind of like backpacking, only there's no like, you don't typically, I mean, you can, I guess, do it in mountains and hills and stuff like that. But typically you see bike packers will like, it's basically camping if you didn't have a car.
Okay.
So you like ride your bike from campsite to campsite.
That's cool.
And then if you find a good place, you can find like a trail that you can follow.
Okay. But there's not like a designated trail. Sometimes
there is.
Okay.
Sometimes there can be. But that's not always the case. So sometimes you'll be like, you're like
just kind of like meandering into wherever.
In the road, on the sidewalk. You're technically not supposed to be on the sidewalk, but whatever. Because a bike is a vehicle, but don't tell that to cars because they don't like bicycles on the road.
I know.
Because it completely slows down traffic. It's really scary sometimes.
It can be very scary. I honestly don't know why a bicyclist would want to be riding on the road.
They have to.
When they don't have like a shoulder or different things like that.
Yeah, but sometimes the shoulder is not even that much of a shoulder, and then there's like
right. I totally agree. And it can like change from like a huge bike lane to like nothing, and you're like, really?
Yeah, and then what happens is all the debris from the road ends up getting pushed over to the shoulder. Yep. So the shoulder is probably like the most dangerous part of the road.
Right. Yeah.
So like you're like I mean like. And then like there's like nails and glass and all kinds of stuff.
Gosh.
It's like it's fun. It's a good time. This is why I do this.
So did you guys end up going camping?
No, we didn't end up going because we got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, there was a threat of rain in addition to the cold.
That would be miserable.
Yes.
Camping.
And then we were sick, so that would have been like, okay, let's go get pneumonia, right? That's not fun at all.
Right.
So we ended up deciding not to take that trip because we were still kind of lingering from sickness, and there was just this chance of like, I can do rain and I can do cold,
but not a combination.
I can't do
of
both.
Yeah.
That
would
both.
Be miserable.
Yeah, that would be terrible. And then you're bike riding.
Yes.
So it's I would even consider hiking in the cold rain. Because you can control moving. Well, not only that, but like it's when you're walking, the rain is only coming from the top.
Right.
But when you're on a bike,
you're like going into it.
Yeah, and the tires are kicking up water.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you're like riding and the tires in front of you or and behind you are kicking up water.
Right.
So like there's water coming from everywhere.
And then if you have a car that's driving by you, then
you're like, forget about it. Yeah. So it's just not. We just decided we've not done bike packing before, so we didn't want that to be our first experience.
You'd be like, this sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And then we never do it again, and it could have been like maybe it's a really cool thing to do.
Right.
So it sounds like it's a lot of fun. So we're gonna have to reschedule that and do that again.
Yeah.
So but it's
maybe in a few weeks when. Because it's supposed to be like it's still in the 40s, and
I know it's still cold.
The foreseeable future.
It's surprisingly, I'm surprised because normally we have like 2 weeks of cold and that's it.
I know.
And then we're like, okay, back to normal.
Yep.
Back to festival weather.
I know.
Like what's going on? I'm not sure what's happening. It's a weird situation. Anyways, okay, so it's probably close enough. I don't know. 8:15. We're gonna go ahead and like officially start. Official.
Okay.
We're gonna make it official, guys. You guys hear me?
Official.
So this is the Ortiz Anomaly podcast, and my name is Gus. So I appreciate you guys watching. This is Brandie Mathison-Klein. She is a realtor and a farmer.
Yes.
So now you're a farmer. Let's add that to your resume.
Yep.
And I wanted to invite you here because I really enjoy your company, and you always have some really cool stuff to talk about and learn about. So
happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I really want to ask you a question about your farm.
Okay.
Because I know this is about real estate, but your farm is super interesting to me because when I first met you, you were very much just real estate was your jam and you were rocking and rolling with it. You were just like, peak of your real estate career as you're like humming, killing it out there. And then if you would have told me at that time, if anyone would have told me at that time that you would have a passion for like being on a farm and raising cows and chickens, I would have been like, there's no way. There's no chance because you are also, at least you used to be, you're not like this now. Very please don't take this the wrong way, but you're a very petite lady, and everything that comes with being a petite lady was very much sort of in your DNA at the time. Right. You were, you always dressed really nicely. You didn't really want to get your hands dirty and things. You're sort of like, what you traditionally saw as the girly girl. Yeah, the girly girl, the princess, right? Like, so the idea of you being a farmer, working through the mud, shoveling poop and feeding chickens and stuff like that, I was like, there's no chance. So how did that even come to like fruition? Become into your world? Like you went for.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting and the same. If you were to have told me before all of that I would be doing this, I would have been like, you're crazy. Right. What are you talking about?
I know.
I mean, I will say growing up, we had chickens and we had horses and pigs and we even had a llama, but I was little. I wasn't the one that was taking care of any of them. I just got to enjoy them, Yeah. And so they weren't really, it was like in my life and then out of my life.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But it really came out of, I would say, nowhere. It started with my husband, Dave, sent me a property that had popped up on his search for one of his clients. And he was like, we should go take a look at this property. It was Friday night. Friday night was our date night.
Okay.
And we had nothing else better to do.
For date night.
And I was like, why? Like, do you want to go look at it for a client? And he's like, no, we should go look at it for us. And I was like, okay, but we literally just got done building our dream house.
Yeah.
On the lake.
I remember, yes.
We've only been in there a couple years. I was like totally happy and content.
Yeah, it's a beautiful house.
And so I was like, okay, we have nothing better to do for date night. And we pulled up to this house and we just fell in love with the property. The property was gorgeous. It had like all these big oak trees, and it was beautiful. And it had this little old farmhouse. It was like 160 years old that needed renovating. And it was like one of those really rash decisions where 2 hours later we're sitting in San Jose's restaurant writing up an offer.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how that path started.
Okay.
How we ended up getting animals was we really wanted to see what we needed to do to get ag exemption.
Oh, that's funny.
So I was like, oh, what could we do to get ag exemption? And so
so it really didn't start with the idea of wanting to have a farm per se. You were just trying to get the tax benefit.
Yes.
That's so funny.
And so Casey Hilliard, who was an agent on our team, a few years back, had shown me these cute little cows. Right? She's like, "Aren't these so cute? These are little mini cows." And I was like, "I didn't even know these things existed." And they were so cute. They like really stuck in my mind. So our acreage is small, and I was like, I wonder if we should get some mini cows, because they don't. I started doing research. They don't take up as much, space. They don't have to eat as much, all of that kind of stuff. So that's really how that whole path started.
Interesting.
And from the chicken part, I mean, if you have acreage, what's better than
free eggs?
Yeah, of course. Our it makes no sense. I told my husband, I was like, we'll make our money back from the chicken coop and the feed and all this in about 3 years worth of our investment of what it costs to put in the infrastructure. So they're not free eggs.
You paid for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
So that's kind of how it all started. And it's so funny because Dave and I were just talking last night. I said, we have learned so much.
I can imagine.
From not knowing anything to really teaching ourselves about what the best breed to get.
Yeah.
How to move them properly when you've got to, I mean, just like all of the different things, breeding, calving, knowing when to look for signs of stress or difficulty, or when they're not feeling well, what to do.
Interesting.
How to milk them, like all of that kind of stuff. And so it's been definitely a journey.
That's so funny. Now, I'm assuming that you guys, you milk them for yourselves, for your own purposes.
No, we don't actually.
You don't drink the milk?
I don't drink milk.
Oh, that's so funny.
I don't actually like milk.
So what do you milk them for?
Well, the only time that we would milk them is if the calf is needing assistance.
Oh.
So if the calf is for example, we had a calf this past week, and the mom's udders are like very, very large. So large that the baby can't get her mouth around the udder. So
I see.
You've got to help her out a little bit.
Gotcha.
But so yeah, the only time that we're dealing with that is to be able to help out.
Interesting.
The baby. Yeah.
Okay. So but you do, I'm assuming you do at least eat the eggs.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes, absolutely.
It's going to take you like 12 years to make your money back, but that's all right.
Yes.
So, so now how did you guys come to, because now you have a full-fledged business from this.
Yeah.
Like it went from just being this idea to, hey, we want a tax exempt status, to now you have actually a full-fledged business.
Right.
So how did that come to fruition? Was that just a natural progression, or was there something that was just like, hey, I have this idea?
Well, so in order to get the ag exemption, you have to have a business plan.
Oh, okay.
And so it's not like, hey, we just have, cows here. You have to have a business plan in place. And so I wanted to be an honoring, participant of that. And so we started breeding the cows, and my daughter was like, Mom, you need to have an Instagram account. And so I was like, I don't know anything about what is that? Right. So she was like, taught me how to do, reels and all of this other kind of stuff. And so things have really just kind of blossomed from there. And we've started having some events at our farm. And that was strictly out of me getting 20 plus calls a week of people asking if they could come visit our farm. And I felt bad saying no.
Right.
And,
yeah.
We're still selling real estate full time.
Right.
And so it was really difficult to try to accommodate people coming at all various different hours.
Sure.
So we just started doing a couple of events where we've got people that are able to come and visit the farm.
Oh, cool. So like dedicated time for them to swing by and see the little mini cows.
Exactly. So we can give them our full attention. They can see the cows and,
That's cool. Now, is that do you like charge for those, or they're just open?
We do. It actually helps pay for the feed because
cool.
It's when all of the feed costs start adding up
significantly.
Imagine. So so we charge a little bit, and that helps to go pay for the hay and their grain and all of that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. Now the actual business is the selling of the cows.
Yes.
And these cows are really like pet cows. They're not really like eating cows.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I could do that.
I know. I'm just saying.
I do eat meat.
Yes.
But I don't think I could eat meat that I named and
raised, right?
I mean, I don't know.
Sally the cow. You can't eat Sally the cow, right?
What are we having for dinner? We're having Sally. I can't do that.
Gotcha.
Not yet.
Yes. So, the business is basically you breed the cows and then you sell them to people all across the nation. And how many cows do you sell on a given year?
It varies based off of how many calves we have. So we're typically selling our calves.
Okay.
We've got our breeding fold that we, those are our mamas. Okay. And then we have 2 bulls that we have. So I would say about 15 is what we'll do this year. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So.
And are you looking to like expand that, or are you like this is a good fit for you? You guys are comfortable.
We did add some additional gals to our breeding herd for 2025. So going into the next calving season, we'll have about we've also got some yearlings that will be going in. So we'll have like 7 or 8 more to add on top of that. So
now, is there like a plan to kind of phase out of real estate and then like phase in this business as like retirement, or is this just an extra thing that you guys are just enjoying?
We're still figuring all of that out. I don't know. I'm kind of in the season of life where I'm truly trying to just like take where God is leading me in whatever direction that looks like. And he's definitely not pulling me away from real estate at this point.
I gotcha.
But we do really enjoy doing what we're doing. It's very therapeutic. I never realized how therapeutic and how much joy I would get from doing it.
That's interesting.
So
okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So now, to switch gears, with regard to real estate, obviously you've been in real estate for a very long time, and your real estate business has changed quite a few times, even in the time that I've been working with you.
Right.
And you taught a class yesterday and kind of talked about how the way that you sort of have things set up right now feels really comfortable for you, right? You've kind of like before you had the responsibility of owning a business that had full staff and everything that comes with having to manage staff, and now you've kind of like sort of adjusted your business to be really sort of like very streamlined in the way that you operate now.
Right.
You are more in production than you are in management now, and of all the things, I know that you're in a stage right now where this is comfortable. Was there a time when you felt the growth of the business and having staff was a place of comfort for you? Was that ever a situation?
A place of comfort?
Yeah. Like, did you feel like, oh, this is where I want to be?
I think the problem that I had during the whole growth of our team and all of that was, and I think a lot of people deal with this in life in general with a lot of different things, is never being content, always looking for like, what's the next best goal?
Okay.
And in growth. And does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very that is a very American thing.
Yeah.
Like we're very growth oriented and everything is growing and you never stop growing and that can get.
And you never stop to take a moment to actually be like, wow, this setup is actually really good and really working for me.
Yeah.
And so always focusing on like, what's the next best thing? And the next thing might not always be better than what you have.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, the struggle was, I really enjoy being with people, working with people on a more intimate level. Like if you were to say, oh, let's go to this big social event, that honestly stresses me out.
Sure.
I'm much more of a natural introvert.
Yeah.
I like having more one-on-one conversations and being able to develop those relationships on a personal level.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was good in the sense of building a team, having the relationships with our agents and our, staff and all of that. But it also comes with a ton of pressure.
Sure. Of
making sure that you are producing enough to make sure that everybody's able to make what they need to make, and all of the different aspects that go with that. And you still have a liking of, for me, I still enjoy going out there and selling real estate, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think it does. The idea, I think that entrepreneurs in general, well, I would almost say that there is a culture with entrepreneurs on with that really pushes this idea that you're always growing, like always seek to grow, right, and that there's never an end to that. You just keep growing as much as you can.
You never actually arrive.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we get lost in the money part of it and the like financial part of growth and forget that growth could come in all these other different variations. Like there's personal growth, there's just professional growth, there's all kinds of ways that you can grow as a person. And we get stuck in sort of the rat race in which is the financial part.
Yes.
And then you end up, oops. Sorry about that, guys. Just kicked my own camera. We get stuck in the financial part, which kind of gets us stuck in just the money, not realizing that there's so many other aspects to just life in general, right?
Absolutely.
So it was just interesting to me because you were sort of on this trajectory of growth, and with I think we're like 20 agents and you had staff, and you were just on this like this rocket ship that was like really, really humming. And then now you've kind of like
recalibrated.
Yeah, you've recalibrated your business.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, like your person is like I see where you are now, and you look like you're in such a better place now.
Oh, thank you.
Like, and it wasn't that you were like in a bad place, but you could tell that it was stressful for you to manage that process.
Yeah.
You handled it well. It's not like I was like worried at ever, right? But like I like where you are now is like it seems like you're more at peace with how things are going in your life, and it's like it's a lot less of what you had before.
It's weird because and it's a major adjustment because when you've been what I would consider myself to be probably a workaholic in all honesty, and you shift gears and you recalibrate and you really start questioning and asking like, what is truly important at the end of the day? What is truly important?
Right.
And I think that, the changes that have taken place in my business and my life just over the last probably 14 to 15 months, I feel have made me realize and just kind of do like a self-assessment, right? So, we totally changed our whole business structure, and then going into early part of 2024, my brother passed away at such a young age. And those types of things also make you take a step back and think, like, it just makes you realize, like, tomorrow is not promised.
Yeah.
And am I living my life in the way that, if I were to die tomorrow, that I would be okay with the way that I lived my life?
Interesting.
What kind of regrets am I currently living with that I can maybe make different choices and different changes that I will feel good about? And for me, it was choosing to be present more in my family's life. So if my grandkids are coming over, that I'm not like, I'm too busy working, I can't. Do you know what I mean? Like, really being able to be present and enjoy the smaller, finer things.
That's interesting.
Like, if I am going to feed the animals, that I'm going to take a little bit of time to, like, brush them and enjoy them, and not just like feed and go on about my day, but like truly being able to enjoy the day and the presence of who God has put before me for that moment in time. And the same with the people that I'm working with in real estate, like really being able to find out, like, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish, and how can I be the one to help you through that? And just, so that's just kind of been, I guess, the major shift for me that has transpired, and slowing down, not realizing that you don't always have to be going at a pace of 90 plus miles an hour. Which is really hard to not do.
Especially if that's what that has been your normal.
If that's been your norm. And it's kind of like, have you ever been like driving, right? You're going like probably 75 miles an hour. And then you get behind somebody that's going really, really slow.
Right.
Like, your instinct is to, go around, at least my instinct is to go around them and start speeding up again.
Right.
And it's when you're behind them. Like, I even get like an irritated feeling in my stomach sometimes.
Like, why are they going so slow? Right.
Yes. And so that's kind of what it's felt like in adjusting to some of those changes.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. Now, you had mentioned something, you taught a class yesterday, and you had mentioned something that was really insightful. And I thought that it was so you taught a class about, what it means to build a team. And the idea of the class was not just to showcase what it means to have a team, but also whether or not that's even a direction you want to consider, which I thought was really insightful, because the assumption most of the time is that, the next step is to have a team.
Right.
Like, well, you in real estate, you start as an agent, and then the next step is I build big enough that I need to hire somebody. And then, once I hire somebody, then I can expand, and this whole idea of growth. And then I hire another person, right? And I just kind of start building my team. That's very normal progression of what is, you hear that in Keller Williams is a very normal, that's the model, is what it's called. So it was interesting to hear that the thought process that you had was, hey, this is how you do this thing, and are you sure you want to do this thing?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, because that there is a very real position to have to consider. Like, whether or not you even want to have the responsibility of having a full real estate team, or is what you're doing right now sufficient that you would be happy doing that, and maybe if anything, maybe outsource a few things.
Adding a little bit of help that you don't necessarily have to
be responsible for.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was interesting, because I hadn't thought of that before going to that class. I hadn't thought in that way. I was just thinking, oh, this is how you're going to teach how to build a team, but not realizing that your intent was like, yes, and you may not want a team. Right.
Yeah.
And I thought that to me was powerful, because it and it's not to say that I would never have one, but it just changed the mindset of how to even look at a thing and whether or not that's something that I would even want to.
Well, and I think that the reason that I did that was because, what was it, 18 years ago or something like that, when I started building our team, I didn't know what all was entailed. I mean, I was following a model, but I didn't realize at the time too, all of the other responsibilities that you actually take on your shoulders when you are running and operating a team. Not to say that it's not been great, and it's just, some people don't have a desire to do that. They just want to be able to either do XYZ, but they don't have any desire to take on all of those other responsibilities. And a lot of times they don't even realize that they're taking on all of those responsibilities. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, kind of like the thought of, hey, I want to have kids because it sounds like fun. And then it's very rewarding.
Yeah. But fun is not the whole, that's not the whole picture.
A whole lot of responsibility that goes with it. Like, you're feeding that child, you are 100% responsible.
The fun is like the sliver over here. And then there's all this work you got to do, this time that's attached to it. Yeah.
And I was actually communicating with one of the people that attended yesterday, and they were telling me what their ahas were. And one was like, I realized I don't actually want to build a team. And I would much rather somebody figure that out in the beginning of that process than to go through the efforts of hiring somebody. Like, it's a lot of work and dedication if you are going to be building a team.
Oh, for sure.
So making sure 100% you understand why you want to do it and that you're up for the challenge.
Well, I mean, I think this also goes back to like the purpose, like what's your reason for doing any of this? Right. It's the whole big why question, right? And, I was having this conversation with another guest, and one of the things that we talked about was, what without thinking about it, most people will say to themselves, I want to be a millionaire, right? And then not really have any purpose behind that. Right. That's just like, oh, that's the thing to be. Yeah. Right. A millionaire. But then not really identifying, well, what will that do? Right. And then, because from one of the things that I sat with my wife, Jackie, we sat down together to kind of talk about like, well, how much would we need to make to live the lifestyle that we just enjoy doing? And it's surprisingly less money than what you would think. Like, everyone thinks you got to be a millionaire to live the lifestyle that you want. And realistically, what you need most of the time, you need a combination of some money and time. That's really
is the biggest thing.
Yeah. So like, we did some calculations, and it was like, well, assuming all the possible expenses that we would likely take into consideration, I think the number that we came up with was like $75,000 a year between the two of us.
Wow. That's very doable.
Yeah. Yeah. When we did the math, I literally had to go back and recalculate everything.
Are you sure we're not forgetting something?
It's got to be something. Like, what are we missing?
But can I say that also has a lot to do with the fact that you guys are very good stewards with your finances? Like, I know we've had, and I don't want to go all into your financial stuff.
Well, I give that to my wife, so.
So kudos to her then, and for you being okay with her taking care of that.
Hey, listen, she's an accountant. I let her handle. Well. Let her handle the our savings side, and I keep kicking this damn thing. All right. So so I give all the I give that all to her. She's super meticulous about how we manage our money. So but yes, but still, like, it's still surprising to me. Yeah. Because you think that you have to make $1 million a year to like live the lifestyle, and we're like talking about, like, it's not like I was like, oh well, all we're going to do is, because I know we hike and stuff like that, and that doesn't, it's not terribly expensive, but we like to travel. So this includes, like, if we wanted to travel to Europe and travel to South America and, do all these kind of like excursions that are typically quote unquote expensive. Right. But like, if we have the time and we have the right amount of money, then we could do all that stuff.
Right.
And it blew my mind.
And the other thing is making sure that you're doing it now.
Yeah.
When you are healthy, when you're able, when you're still breathing on this earth, on this side of the earth. And not like, well, let's save up, and then wait until we get to be retired or older when we have more time. I look at that differently.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what your health is going to be like. You don't know what your, motor skills are going to be. You don't know if you're even going to be alive. And so being able to take advantage of those opportunities and peel out those times now in your life, I feel is so important. There was a story that I read. This was probably 20 years ago, and I saved it, and it still resonates with me. I pull it up and read it almost every year. And it's talking about this guy that goes on vacation, and he's visiting this fishing town. And, he sees this fisherman. He goes out and fishes in the morning, comes back and sells his fish at the market, and goes and takes a siesta and, chills out, and then goes and does the same thing the next day. And the guy that's on vacation owns a big company, and he's like, you've got a great skill in catching fish. And he's like, why don't you get a fleet of boats and get people to work for you, and you get a lot of fish, and then you could build a big company and
sell more fish, make a ton of money,
make more money. Then you'll make so much money that you can then retire, and then you can have time to take a siesta and all of this other kind of stuff. And the guy's like, I'm already doing that, but I'm doing it every day.
Yeah.
But I'm just doing it on a smaller scale. I'm not, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's just kind of like the philosophy and the difference of the lens that you choose to look through life. And
Right. Go through the idea was to go through all that work to make all this money so that you can retire and enjoy your days.
Yes.
And he's like, well, I'm already enjoying my days now.
I'm enjoying every day right now as it is. What are you talking about? Yes.
That's funny. But that's definitely like American thought process versus what you see in other countries. Right. So
and I'm not saying I absolutely am not saying that the other thought process or philosophy is wrong. It's just different. There's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to what someone's goals are. Like, what is it that drives them?
Yeah, and I think that it also depends on what season of life you're in, what your experiences have been, like all of those different things that form what your goals are.
So do you have any? So, I mean, right now it seems like you're kind of in a space where you seem like you're on cruise control. Like you have your farm that's kind of rocking and rolling, and you have your real estate business that's kind of rocking and rolling, but it's not like you're driving those things. It seems like you're kind of riding the wave of those things. At least that's what it looks like from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Only because you're super relaxed all the time, and you're just kind of, it just seems like you're comfortable right now. Right. Like where do you have a vision of where things are going to go? Or are you just kind of like letting the world kind of, as opposed to driving, which is what you were doing before?
Yes.
You were very much driving before, right? You're not driving right now. You're kind of sitting shotgun, and you're just like, hey, it's nice out there. Look at this. Hanging out. This is a pretty day. And like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the vibe that I get from you now versus when I first met you.
Yes.
So I'm interested to kind of hear, like, do you have any like direction that you're looking to go in, or like, are you just kind of like taking it as it comes?
It's a great question that I often ask myself as well. There's definitely things that I have that I have desires to be able to do. As far as when that takes place, how it takes place, I don't know all of the details to what that looks like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so I'm honestly at this juncture, when I'm not feeling the exact poll on this is exactly what I feel led to be doing. Mm-hmm. I'm being patient. I'm just waiting, and it's not like I'm waiting for like God to come down and be like, this is exactly what you need to do, or this is, when you need to do it.
Right.
But for now, I am truly just, I'm taking it not day by day, but I guess you could say that, and this is the first time ever in my life that I've been like, you know what, I'm going to see what God has in store, and I'm going to take it from that.
Gotcha. You're taking more of like a responsive position as opposed to like like before you were attacking.
Yes.
Right. And now you're just like, it just seems like you're just like, well, let's see what happens.
Like, I know the things that need to get done.
Yeah.
And the things that we enjoy, and all of those different things. And I do feel a deep-seated desire. I feel that through the years of experience that I've had in coaching and leading and all of those different aspects of things, and just through also personal experiences, there's things that we would be able to contribute in the sense of being able to help other couples that maybe have blended families. And so something that's like not real estate related, but is still something that I'm very passionate about, in the sense of maybe having, a couples retreat or something along those lines, is
like that's on the vision board somewhere.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
that's really neat.
Yeah.
So, how does, because obviously you have the things that you do, and you've always been a very driven person, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm always interested to see your dynamic with Dave. Because Dave is just, it's funny because he is a force of nature himself.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because he really, you can tell that he really enjoys like figuring out ways to make you happy. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Like he really enjoys that. You see it. Like he really enjoys that. Uh-huh. So, in terms of like how you guys, talking about like relationships, which I think is a really important part of life in general. Mm-hmm. Like, without getting, obviously I don't want to get too deep into it, but like, how do you see your dynamic with Dave, and like, how does that interweave with, because obviously you're also in business with him, both in the farm and in the real estate. So you guys are with each other all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How does that dynamic work? Like, is there something in the way that you guys engage that allows you to work well in across all these different aspects? Because a lot of times, you have a husband and wife, and I'm going to say team, using that loosely because you're a team in all kinds of ways. Sometimes, when you're constantly like in each other's faces all the time, like sometimes that can get aggravating, right? That's normal. So is there something in the dynamic that you guys have that you feel like really contributes to your ability to work really well together? Because it seems like you guys have a really good dynamic in terms of the way that you guys work with each other.
Yeah, I do. I feel like we work really well together. In the instances or situations where we are not working well together, I feel that we discuss it to figure out why and what to do different next time. But for me, I really feel that respecting Dave and his thought process and his decision on certain things is very, very valuable. And then also each of us having our particular roles, right? So like, I remember when we first got married, I had like a sign that needed to be put up and a lockbox. And there was like a couple of things that I really could use his help with. Like, I don't mean like there was a post sign that needed to be put in, not something that was easy for me to do myself.
Sure.
But I didn't want to overwhelm his day.
Yeah.
Right. So I asked him, what do you have going on today? And he took that very offensively, in the sense of like, why are you asking me what I have going on today? Like, you're being very intrusive in my day. The reason that I was asking was, if he already had a full day, I wasn't going to put more on his plate.
You didn't want to be intrusive to his day.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
And he was taking it as like, and so we had a little bit of an argument about that, right? So he said, next time you just need to tell me, I need you to put this sign up and I'll get it handled. Right. And I'm like, okay. So now I just say, I need this done.
Yeah.
And he figures it out.
Right.
So that's what his preference was. And I was like, okay,
That's funny because
I'm just using that as one example.
No, it's funny because I think that the way that men and women communicate is different.
Yes.
Right? Like, you would have appreciated Dave asking, what do you got going on today?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
As opposed to just telling you to do something.
Exactly.
And that's very, I find that, because this is the same thing for Jackie and I, is like, I would prefer for her to just tell me to do a thing, right? As opposed to like beating around the bush or asking me what's going, like, I just
we're more sensitive about like,
So like that's interesting. And I think understanding like the way that you communicate, because that happened to us too. Like, there was a time when we were going through we were really struggling with our relationship in general. And it wasn't until like we were kind of at odds with each other at one point, and I sat down and I said, there's got to be something that either I'm missing or she's missing or something.
Yeah.
And we decided to sit down and just kind of like talk everything out.
Yeah.
In a way that we hadn't done so before.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like she was able to, because she has a hard time articulating her thought process of how she's thinking about a thing. And it's much easier for me. And a couple of things that really kind of changed was like me having the understanding that I need to give her time to figure out how to say the thing that she needs to say, because she has a hard time articulating. Because what I was taking that as is that, she's just ignoring me, doesn't want to talk to me. I'm trying to solve the problem and she doesn't want to have a conversation.
Right.
And then this is just one of many things, but this was one thing that kind of like the aha that came up that helped us to then be able to communicate better, was the idea that, okay. And then she would like later on, it was funny because then like that would happen. And then later on, she would then proceed to have the conversation that she stopped having a week ago. I'm past it. Right. Right. And then I'm just like, what's going on? Like, why are you? So then I would get pissed thinking that she's trying to bring up old stuff.
Right.
And so
she's like, no, I'm just now processing.
Yeah. Now it's all coming together for her to be able to articulate. So understanding that was a big component to like how we had to figure out.
It's kind of like when you drive your vehicle, you know exactly how your vehicle runs and operates.
Yes.
But if you get into somebody else's car, and you're not used to necessarily driving it, like, you know that it still gets from point A to point B, but their shifter might be up here versus down there.
Right.
And understanding how each other operates and how the car operates helps you to be able to
make a smoother ride.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yes. And so, I mean, and by no stretch, I mean, we still have our moments,
Yeah.
But it's how you get through those moments. And also at the end of the day, when we do find ourselves in any kind of a disagreement, just being able to realize, and we'll vocalize this sometimes. He'll remind me and I'll remind him, you and I are on the same team. Like, we might be disagreeing with one another, but our end goal is the same.
Right.
So like, we can either choose to continue to be mad at each other or continue to argue for as long as we want, or we can just resolve it and be able to move on.
Right.
And, it's just at the end of the day, it's like, this is silly.
Yes. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So,
and
to like, So Dave's been working on, we're in the process of doing a fundraiser, which, we've been talking about that. And so he's been working on the website for it. And I mean, he's been staying up till like 2-3 o'clock in the morning for 3 or 4 nights in a row. And for me personally, like, I would not be able to operate like that.
Yeah.
He's not operating well, but I also know I can't tell him what to do.
Sure.
I have to just honor that that's what he's going to do. And he's going to live with the consequences of being tired. And I'm going to live with the consequences of him being a little bit grumpy, but I'm going to give him a little bit more grace.
Yes.
And be very appreciative of the fact that he is
trying to get
taking the time to get this done in a timely fashion. Like, you know what I mean? Just being able to understand the whole dynamics of things. And so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So I want to change gears one more time.
Okay.
So this podcast is about, really like real estate and business. And I know we've kind of very lightly touched on those things.
Yeah.
So I really want to talk a little bit about real estate. So I'm interested to hear, as a realtor, because you actually lived in real estate through the 2008 debacle. Yeah. And, a lot of people keep talking about there's that potential for that to happen again. And we're hearing, and nobody knows. Right. But I'm interested to hear, like, how are you looking at the real estate market today in terms of the dynamics of the market? And are there any specific, like, concerns that you have about like what's going on in the market, and like how are you thinking about the real estate market right now? Like what is your thought on what's going on with all the different things that are happening?
I personally am not as concerned as maybe other people are feeling, and it might just be because of how bad I saw it get before. I mean, when you see a 50% decrease in property values and pretty much everybody that's selling their home is in a negative equity situation.
Yeah.
I think that homeowners are in a much different position today than they were back then for several different reasons. One, back then, if you could fog up a mirror, you could get a loan.
Yeah.
And they changed the loan guidelines significantly with that.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are in very low fixed interest rate loans. And I don't know what the stats are, but there's a very high percentage of people that actually own their homes outright.
Yeah.
So I just think that overall, the market as a whole is going to be much more secure in that sense.
Okay.
Interest rates still suck. Not going to lie about that.
Sure.
And, the inflation and everything else, everything is costing more money.
Right.
But I still feel that, people are always going to need to buy and, they're going to need to move for whatever reason, whether it's a job change, their families are growing, their families are decreasing in size, all of those different things. And so, I personally anticipate 2025 being a better year than 2024.
Okay.
Not wonderfully better, but I do feel that it's going to be a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are there any specific elements of, and this can be from just the dynamics you're seeing within the industry. This could be political. This could be geopolitical. I mean, are there any specific elements that you think are contributing factors to the market in your mind doing well this year? Yeah,
I mean, I do feel that eventually the interest rates will start coming down a little bit. I don't think that they're going to be significantly lower. I think it's going to be, really, really long time before we would ever see, 3% interest rates again.
Sure.
So there's that dynamic, which the amount of interest that you're paying on a loan affects affordability
for sure
significantly. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest factors that could potentially help the market. And I also feel that, people are reducing the prices on their homes, which helps improve the affordability, slightly, but not a ton.
Yeah.
It doesn't help the sellers on the selling side if they're making less money, but on the same token, if you are buying and selling in the same market,
right, you take advantage of the buy side.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of a wash in the end, if that makes sense. So, but obviously we're getting, President Trump is getting inaugurated very soon.
Yeah.
And
yeah, regardless of your politics, people are optimistic.
Yeah, I think that anytime there's a election year, there's pause. Like if you look historically, there's a pause in people making any decisions because they don't know which way things will look.
Yeah.
Now, there's also heightened fears of like us going into World War III and different things like that. So aside from those big things happening,
right? And there's nothing
nothing we can do.
Yeah,
about
we don't really have a lot of
know?
control over that.
Right.
Yeah. If that kind of thing happens, which I mean, of course, it's possible, but I feel like that's. I still feel like it's. I feel that is not. It's more talk than it is real, right? I feel like that's more talk than it is real because, well,
they've been talking about it for
a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is that the repercussions of something like that are so dramatic. Like I can't imagine that there is a nation out there that would be thinking this is a good idea. Right. Yeah. Like this is, you know what? This is my best option.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine there's a nation out there thinking like their best option is to go and make World War III happen. Right. To provoke something like that.
Yeah.
So, even though we, from a military standpoint, would be dominant, even the United States, I can't imagine even the United States, who would likely be the dominant force in the world for something like that, would want to get into that because there would be so much like collateral damage from that that would be highly problematic.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that there's a lot of talk about that, but for me personally, it would be difficult for me to envision a world where someone would feel like that is the
best option. Yeah.
Right. Or they feel like that's the only option they have available to them. Right. Yeah. With so many different ways to communicate and so many diplomatic ways to engage with even countries we don't get along with. You can talk to that country that knows that country that'll talk to that country. Like there's ways to have conversations indirectly even. Right. Yeah. So unless you're talking about like an actual lunatic, right? Which I mean, hey, there are some out there.
Yeah.
But most of them are really like they're really isolated. Like the ones that people are concerned about, like Kim Jong-il or whatever. Like that guy's so isolated.
Right.
Like he's like in the middle of like there's nothing. They don't even have lights on in his country. Like it's crazy.
Right. Right.
Like they have like old AK-47s and like this is the peak of technology. Yeah. Like it's like you have like you might as well have bats and hammers. I mean,
right. Yes.
So like, so I think that those nations are like they don't have any positioning to be able to do anything of significance.
Right.
That they wouldn't end up having significant backlash that would be problematic for those countries.
Right.
So I don't have so much of a concern for that. I think there are. Have you seen or heard of this BRICS? Have you heard about this?
Are you talking about over like in England?
Well, it's actually a number of countries. So BRICS is a currency being developed.
Okay.
So this is something that you should probably look into.
Okay.
Right. It's basically it's an acronym. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Really?
Those were the nations that initiated this. It's like a currency designed to trade in energy.
Oh, okay.
So like right now, well, not right now, but it used to be the case that the only way you could trade energy was using the US dollar, which is why the US dollar has been so dominant.
Right.
Right. If you wanted to buy oil or anything like that, or coal or anything, you had to use the US dollar to purchase it. So they've, and of course, The United States has done a lot of sanctioning, which is basically, not allowing people to trade in the U.S. dollar for energy, is essentially what a lot of the sanctions turn into. And a lot of nations have been upset by that. So they decided to come up with this new sort of currency to be able to trade energy using this new currency.
Gotcha.
And it's supposed to take the place of the dollar.
Right.
Which
could then totally deflate the value of the dollar.
Correct. Yeah. So the biggest concern that I have is that, and it's a concern for me because I live in the United States.
Right.
But BRICS is, from the global perspective, is probably not a bad idea. But I'm not outside the United States.
You're so that U.S. dollar is mine.
Yeah. So that sucks for me.
Right.
So, but if you are outside of the United States, then that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
But but
have you and Jackie ever considered moving abroad anywhere else besides the U.S.?
Not necessarily. I mean, for all the problems that the United States has, I mean, it's still the best country in the world, in terms of all the opportunities that are here and the freedoms that we have and stuff like that. So, I mean, I would consider maybe having if we ever did something if we did snowbirding or something like that, maybe doing something like that in another country or something like that. But not really. I would, what I would do though is Africa right now is that continent is developing and it's developing pretty fast.
Really?
So I think that there would definitely be some opportunity to invest in Africa and different African nations. Now, not all nations are built the same, so you have to identify what nations are going to be ideal.
Right.
But I think that there's definitely a lot of growth that's happening there. China's heavily invested in Africa. We attempted to invest in Africa, but we did a lot of. I think the United States missed the boat in their ability to negotiate assistance for Africa, and I think a lot of that was taking advantage of some situations that the African nations were like, that's not really going to benefit us.
Right.
And the Chinese kind of swooped in and were like, hey, we won't do any of that stuff. We'll just loan you the money and we'll just make it a nice, even, easy. This is the trade that we're going to be doing.
Right.
So, and of course we're pissed because we're like, hey, China's all in Africa now. And we're like, well, we messed up.
Right.
We didn't give them a good deal. Right. Yeah. We probably should have given them a better deal.
Right.
So now China's over there, which I mean, that's a whole other thing that we should also be paying attention to because, they're an economic powerhouse that, from a competitive perspective, we need to be paying attention to. Now, they're not nearly as big as the United States, but they still are significant in the global spectrum.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I would have bigger concerns with rather than World War III.
Yeah.
Right. This BRICS thing that's happening, which China is involved with, the Africa, which China is involved with, right? And not that I'm against China, and it's just I'm pro the United States.
No, I totally get that. Yeah, absolutely.
So
I'm American.
Yeah, exactly, quite literally. So so those are the things that I think I would have more concerns about. So we'll see, I guess, how that ultimately plays out. But
you've definitely intrigued my interest on that. I to be honest, I rarely watch TV.
Yeah.
I would say maybe a couple times a month do we turn the TV on.
Right.
So I feel like and I definitely am not, if I'm in the car, I'm listening to my Audible books and different things like that. So I think to some extent I live in a little bit of a bubble. I mean, I do pay attention to some things going on in that regards, but everything that you were just talking about is totally new to me.
Well, we don't even have a TV in our house. So the things that I go down these rabbit holes of looking at what's going on here, and then all of a sudden this is really interesting.
How do you even find that information out? How do you even know where to even start?
Well, I listen to a number of different podcasts and YouTubers and stuff like that, and a lot of it is non-traditional YouTube news folks, I guess you could say. And I try to to listen to people that are talking about what's happening like internationally.
Right.
Because
which I think is super important.
Yeah, because I mean, I think a lot of what we already hear is what's happening locally. And not that I don't want to hear about what's happening locally, because it is important.
Right.
But, I think that there are a lot of like global things that are happening that we need to be paying attention to, because they will have an impact in...
It's a ripple effect.
Yeah, they're going to have an impact in us, right?
Exactly.
And if BRICS becomes a more significant player, which right now they're a very minor player, but if they start becoming a more major player in the energy sector, then that means that the dollar is going to weaken, right? Which means that there's going to be some inflationary elements that can happen there,
right?
In terms of its devaluation of the dollar itself, which could be problematic, right?
Exactly.
So so I just want to I want to pay attention to that, because it helps me to kind of figure out like, well, where, not that I'm like the super sophisticated strategic person with money, but it at least gives me an idea of like, okay, if I need to put money somewhere, like where should I be thinking about putting it, and how can I like leverage the circumstances that are happening globally that would keep me in a good position, so I don't have to be as worried, right, if things were to go sideways. So that's what that is, right? It's just I'm trying to like pay attention to be like, okay, well, where should I be like moving? With if the
what's my strategic chess move?
Exactly.
Or risk move more.
Exactly. So that's kind of like what I go, I go into these little rabbit holes all the time. So, but I ended up finding out some really interesting stuff that I was like, wow, I didn't know that this was even happening. So like as I was finding that out, I was like, oh man, this is okay. I got to pay attention to this. So
definitely, you'll have to share some of your resources with me.
No, I'm happy to do that. So anyways, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you coming out. I know I went a little bit on a rant at the end there with some of the crazy stuff that's happening in it. But I appreciate your insight. I it's always interesting to talk to you. And I thank you for taking the time to come in and kind of share some of that stuff with us here on the podcast. No problem. So if someone wanted to, whether it's regarding cows or regarding real estate, like how can someone find you?
You can always email me at brandie@mkghomes.com.
Okay.
For our farm, you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Big Oaks Mini Farm. And my phone number is 407-488-3446.
Awesome. So if you guys have any questions about real estate or cows, feel free to give Brandie a call. She's definitely going to help you out.
More specifically, miniature Scottish Highland cows.
There you go.
Not just cows in general.
So that's our time. If you like what you're seeing, please share. If you have any questions that you just want to know, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, or you can reach out to Brandie directly. I appreciate your time. Please make sure you share this with all your friends. And if you'd like to have be a guest on the show, or someone who would be a great guest on the show, please make sure you comment below, or just let me know directly, and I'm happy to bring them on. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Awesome.